let's go down to an equally simple one, but different. If it's raining, then it's cloudy. It's not cloudy, so it's not raining. Okay, you see again, if you want to go back up and look how it differs from this one, it actually, the first sentence is the same. It's the same conditional. That's just, maybe here's a side note. The same conditional can be put to very different uses. So you might have wondered, like, why am I stating things so explicitly here? It's because, why am I saying if it's raining, then it's cloudy, and then going on to belabor the point and say it's raining, so it's cloudy? Well, because the conditional, the if then there, if it's raining, then it's cloudy, can be put to different uses. Here's a second one. If it's raining, then it's cloudy. It's not cloudy, so it's not raining. Take a minute here, pause the video, and see whether, here, let me put this onto a different page for y'all so you can see all the options all at once. Okay, there's all 5 of your options for the valid pattern that this could fit into. See if you can see which pattern this is going to fit into. Pause now. Okay, so we're going to look at this. Here are my clues again. It's got a conditional, so we can rule out, again, we can rule out this last one. That one doesn't even have a conditional in it. But then which of these first 4 should it be? Well, look, again, look, what is the form of that conditional? Well, if we're assuming it's if A, then B, that means A in this instance is it's raining. B is it's cloudy. Okay, now here's the thing about this excerpt. It is a little bit more complex because neither of those claims appears in the argument at all. You do not see the claim that it's raining or that it's cloudy. But what you do see is the negation of both of those claims. It's not cloudy, so it's not the case that it's cloudy. It's not raining. It's not the case that it's raining. So what we should see then is B is the claim that it's cloudy. So what is the claim it's not cloudy? Well, that would be the claim that not B, right? And if A is it's raining in that conditional, what is it's not raining? Well, that would be the claim that not A, or it's not the case that A. Again, that sounds a little artificial, but that's the way we have to do it if we're using letters to be variables. Okay, so then which form does that fit? Well, it's right here. And I'll highlight it again for you. So hopefully you're starting to see, eventually you won't have to do this step of spelling it all out. You'll just see this and say, oh, that's this format right here. And so if we wanted to put this in, it's going to be, again, just repeating exactly what's said in this excerpt. But again, that's fixing to not be true with the more complex arguments. And I'm only changing the so to a therefore just for the sake of uniformity. So I'll always use therefore in these numbered arguments to indicate the conclusion. And again, that's kind of arbitrary. You don't have to do that. If you want to use so or hence or whatever, that's fine. Okay, so we know this is the valid argument. That is, if the premises are true, if it's true that if it's raining, then it's cloudy. And if it's true that it's not clouding, it has to be the case that it's not raining. It's a valid argument. And anything that fits into this form is a valid argument. And let me just take the opportunity here to say, that's true even if the premises are false. Here's an argument that fits into this form. Okay, the conclusion is true. I'm maybe giving you new information here, but the premises are both false. It's not the case. So I'm not a human, that's false. I actually am a human. And this conditional, if I'm an alien, then I'm a human, is also false. Like you could be an alien and not be a human. In fact, probably if you're an alien, then necessarily you're not a human. But this is still a valid argument in the sense that if the premises were true, then the conclusion would have to be true. If this conditional were true, and if it were really true that I'm not a human, I would not be able to be an alien. And part of seeing that is just assume, find in your place, in your mind, a place where you can assume these two premises to be true and ask yourself, if they were true, even though they're not, but if they were, could the conclusion be false, or would it have to be true? And if it would have to be true, then it's a valid argument. And part of that is just seeing that it falls into a valid pattern. If you can see that it falls into this pattern, then you don't even have to think about it. You don't have to do that little weird imagination thing. You can just say, oh, it falls into this pattern. I know that everything that falls into that pattern is valid. Okay, so I'll remove this just for clarity's sake. All right, next excerpt. Now here it gets a little bit more complex. And again, I'll put this onto a separate page for y'all so you can see all the options. I'm giving you the same argument pattern options every time. There are other argument patterns that are valid, but again, just trying to keep it simple and keep them all on one page so you wouldn't have to wait until I scroll down to see what the other option was. Okay, so here's an argument. It's going to rain tomorrow because whenever I wash my truck, it rains, and I'm washing my truck tomorrow. Okay, so that's an argument. Now this one is slightly more complex and I'll tell you why, but take a minute, pause here and see if you can see which form this fits into. It's not quite as obvious here. First step should always be identify the conclusion. That should be your first step whenever you're trying to analyze an argument from an excerpt. What is the conclusion? All right, pause here if you haven't already. Okay, so what's the conclusion? That's my first question. We've already practiced this. I hope you can see that it's going to rain tomorrow is the conclusion. Okay, so what are the premises then? In this case, it's a little bit harder because there's a conditional here, but it's not stated as an if then. So this is why when it gets a little bit more complex, you're having to read a little bit more structure into the excerpt as it stands, right? It's not being given to you all right there on the surface. You're having to look at it and say, wait, is there a conditional going on here? It's not totally clear. In this case, I think the conditional is and I'll just go ahead and put a then in here just for uniformity's sake. If I wash my truck on a certain day, then it will rain on that day. That is a different way of saying this right here, or not the because part, but the whenever I wash my truck, it rains. And again, I'm putting it into that if then just to make the conditional format clear for uniformity's sake. Again, you could get a valid argument without stating it like that, but we want to try to make it very easy to fit these into a valid argument pattern. And the patterns we have are stated in terms of if then. Okay. Now, if that's the conditional we're starting with, well, do we see other parts of that conditional, what's called the antecedent, what comes between the if and the then? Or do we see what's called the consequent, what comes after the then, anywhere in the argument? Well, again, we've restated things a little bit, but you can sort of see this consequent as the conclusion. It's going to rain tomorrow is kind of very similar to it will rain on that day because we're talking about tomorrow specifically. So that's going to be the conclusion. You put a therefore there. And that would make the other premise this. So again, what form does this follow? If you didn't get the right answer the first time, or if you were stuck, I've kind of moved you very close to the answer now and see if you can see it now. Okay, again, pause now if you want to, before I give the answer, but the answer again is this first, or what was the form of the first argument. It was just less clear in this case. It wasn't as obvious. You didn't have an if then claim in the excerpt, and you had to change things around a little bit to see that format. But that's what's happening here. So we can put numbers on this just for uniformity's sake. Okay, so there you go. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could have premise 2 not stated as a general principle, because it differs a little bit from this format right here, because the sentences actually change a little bit over the course of A is going to change a little bit between 1 and 2. If you wanted to, premise 2 could even, to really exactly fit this argument form, you could make it a more specific principle or a more specific if then claim. And now it really exactly fits this one. And that's fine too. So either one of those would have been fine. The first one that I had is a little bit more of a jump. You actually have to change the form a little bit and be able to see that the argument is still valid.